Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. I recently posted a must-try florals video, and I left out of that video my favorite tuberose and gardenia heavy fragrances. And the reason for that is that this is one category of florals that I've gone a little bit bananas in over the past year in terms of collecting fragrances. You might recall that at the top of the year, I filmed a perfume resolutions video where I said that I was going to try not to have too many of the same profile of fragrance in my collection. Well, I have to admit, this is one category where I just fail miserably. I am a tuberose fanatic. I do love gardenia as well, and I really like when they're combined in floral fragrances. I have a thing for it. My husband loves them. The kids here love them. So it's an easy category to get like obsessive over. I thought that I would film a separate video with my must-try tuberose gardenia heavy fragrances. So here we are. I have narrowed down to somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe between 10 and 12 that I'm going to be sharing with you. But there's so many beauties. I will also drop some additional recommendations either in the description box or in the pinned comment below, or both, because I don't have every tuberose and gardenia fragrance in the whole world. I'd love to have them all, or at least try them all, but I don't. So while I have a lot, I do have a limited collection compared to what's out on the market, and do want to share some ideas about the ones that I think you should get your nose on, at least from a reference standpoint, so that you know what they smell like and know whether they are for you or if they're not for you. And then some others that I think you should also try out just for the fun of trying the fragrance. So before we get started, I'd love to hear from you. Are you a tuberose or gardenia fan? Do you like them both? Please leave that for us in the comments. And if you are a fan, what are your top fragrance choices that you would recommend to all of our fragrance friends here watching the video today? Tuberose is one of those notes that people are either really attracted to or sometimes heavily repulsed by. So I understand that, I get it, and hope that you're here either because you are a tuberose lover or because you just enjoy hanging out and hearing about fragrances, even if you're not that into them. Feel free, though, to share in the comments if tuberose is something that you're averse to and just can't get with. That's okay, and you're welcome to hang out here anyway. So let's go straight out of the gate with perhaps one of the most iconic fragrances of modern day, Rouge Malachite from Armani Prive. Before I even get started, yes, this is a pricey fragrance, and there is a phenomenal dupe that I would like to recommend for those of you that are watching your budget or just don't care to spend that much for a single bottle of perfume. Try Luxury Rouge by Riffs. When I tell you that it's spot on, that is exactly what I mean. No one will be able to tell that you're not wearing the original. I wore this yesterday. This is a big hit in my house. It's very tuberose heavy, although it does have some jasmine and ylang-ylang. I love that the yellow floral in here gives it a little bit of roundness. Tuberose is one of those notes that can come across rather green in some fragrances, and then in others, depending on what notes surround tuberose, it can feel very buttery, and I do have some buttery options that I'm going to share with you, like thick and luscious and buttery. I love that this fragrance is a little bit on the lighter side in terms of the density of the tuberose. Tuberose is definitely present in this fragrance. It has a base of amber that nicely supports tuberose and the other white and yellow florals. And I dare say there's a little bit of spiciness, maybe like a pepperiness that comes into play to accompany those other notes and make this a really interesting fragrance. I find this to be elegant and alluring and just a fun, easy wear of a tuberose fragrance, in my opinion. This is sort of your quintessential tuberose. If you only had one, I might perhaps suggest this one to try, or the dupe that I shared. Is a fragrance that, if this one is a little bit peppery and ambery, the one I'm going to show you is more girly and fluffy and sweeter all around and appropriate for a wide variety of ages. This one I would say is maybe a little bit leaning more on the mature side. Like, you know, anybody can wear whatever they want, but if you care about that sort of thing, I'd say this one is for the more mature ladies, like myself. And Love Tuberose really does span a variety of age groups in terms of appeal. This is by Amouage, and this is a fragrance that I would say for people that are perhaps afraid of tuberose or think that it comes across too strong in a fragrance, and you might want something a little bit maybe more on the girly feminine side of things than perhaps some of these other fragrances that can get rather mature. So I love that this has a whipped cream note in it and vanilla, and it also has gardenia, and they mesh really nicely to create something that almost verges on the edge of a gourmand tuberose, if you can have such a thing. I wouldn't say that it is gourmand in the sense that it's not like an edible smelling kind of fragrance. It doesn't smell like food, but it definitely has a very girly sweetness to it and a fluffiness that makes this a really easy light wear as well. And hello, let's give it up for the Amouage bottles, which are just gorgeous. Move along to another fragrance that I think deserves a lot more attention and doesn't get it on YouTube, and I am just not sure why. It is still available on discount sites. I'm not sure if any retailers sell it. I haven't checked, but it's Alexander McQueen and it's called McQueen. I will say there is an even lighter version of this called McQueen Eau Blanche that has the white top that I think is really lovely, a well-mannered, soft, easy tuberose for everyday wear. This one is a tad bit more punchy than the Eau Blanche version, but not by much. I mean, they're close together. One's like the quieter little sister of this one. I will also say, if you have been in search of Madonna's Truth or Dare fragrance because you really like that one, I had it and sold it off. It's a great fragrance, but I had so many tuberoses that I would probably reach for before that one. And one of the reasons was because this one smells nearly identical to Truth or Dare by Madonna. So if you're looking for that and can't find it and really are not about the bottle, but more so the scent, try this one. This one has a crisper tuberose than perhaps the Rouge Malachite or the Love tuberose. It smells a little bit crisper as a fragrance. It does have other white florals accompanying it. Another one that has jasmine and ylang-ylang as well, and a little bit of woodiness in the base. There's a slight spiciness to this that I think puts it more in the category of like the Rouge Malachite than the Love tuberose that I just mentioned, but not by much. I still think, although there's an Eau Blanche version that's even lighter and easier to wear, this is a rather well-mannered tuberose by all accounts. And I do really think these bottles are just so nice with these nice rounded edges and the studded top. So it looks really great in the collection, and it's a great tuberose. Bar none, one of the sexiest tuberose fragrances in my collection. And I have to tell you, I didn't wear it for a bit and considered passing it along, and then wore it again before just to make sure and thought, no way, this has got to stay in my collection. I affectionately call this fragrance my Peggy Bundy fragrance. If you watch that show with the Bundy family, you remember that Peggy was beautiful in her gaudiness. And I consider this bottle to be like the Peggy Bundy among my collection. And it is Mancera's Wild Python. So initially when I tried this, I thought that the bottle did not match the fragrance. And I still kind of think that, but I'm coming to understand more that the bottle in some ways can represent the sort of depth and loudness of this fragrance. This is a loud fragrance. A few sprays, that's usually the case with most Manceras anyway. A few sprays will take you through the entire day and fill up a space quite nicely. What I really enjoy about this fragrance, and the reason that I consider it to be so sexy, is, well, one, hubby thinks it's sexy, so that's like a check mark right there. But also, in addition to having a really pronounced tuberose, this has a nice, sweet, fruity accord from peach and osmanthus that give it both a sweetness and a fluffiness. It's accompanied with a really nice, fluffy musk as well. So this sits quite nicely on the skin, and I think a lot of people find this fragrance appealing on others. Like when they smell it on others, they like it a lot. My only caution, I'm to hear on this, because you don't need a lot of sprays, y'all. 2, 3, 4 sprays if you're daring is probably max, and that will take you through the day. Less is more with this one, but it is very alluring and very sexy. Imagine like the prettiest tuberose that you can imagine meets Love Don't Be Shy by Kilian, and they're smashed together in a glorious fragrance. That is what you get with Mancera Wild Python. Another unsung fragrance in the tuberose world. There are some channels that have given this fragrance a little bit of shine, but I'm surprised it doesn't show up more, particularly because it has pretty good projection and longevity, sillage, all of the things, you all. It's Nishane's Tuberoza. One thing I appreciate about this fragrance is that it has a distinct woodiness to it from sandalwood and vetiver. It has a beautiful musk, a little bit of yellow floral, and some herbal aromatic notes from marigold, and I think some others that accompany the tuberose in this fragrance to give this a really well-rounded, full feeling as a fragrance. This is one that you wear when, particularly, I would say great for fall and great for winter as it starts to cool down and get into the cooler months, because it is a thicker fragrance, if you will, not buttery in the sense that I'm going to talk about in some of my other selections coming up, more so in the fact that it has some heft from the musk and the woodiness in the base of this fragrance. There's also a little bit of citrus that you get right at the top, but then that sort of settles down. And then you get this tuberose, musky, woody delight. You definitely have to be a tuberose lover for this one, because the tuberose is pronounced in this fragrance. And I think some reviews even describe the tuberose in this one as fleshy. Interesting word for fragrance note, but yeah. If you're one that wants your fragrances to last long and have a lot of presence, I would definitely check this one out. Then a tuberose that has been around for a couple of decades and that I've been wearing just as long is Michael by Michael Kors. Now, before we go on, if you are in my age range, or rather an age range to remember this fragrance, it originally came out, at least this is my understanding, because I don't remember this, but I have read up on this since then, with the originals just have the word Michael on the front. The newer versions that were released a little bit later than this one have Michael Kors, the full Michael Kors name on the front. So that's the difference. And this one is supposed to be richer and deeper. And I would say that that's true. But honestly, you can't tell an enormous difference. Only the purists among us that want the original versions would care about this version versus that one. So this was a powerhouse of a fragrance when it was first released, and I think still is. This one is one that some people might consider screechy. I don't particularly love that word, but I do understand what people mean by it. So this does have some harsh edges to some noses. I think it is a beautiful fragrance that has stood the test of time. Absolutely heavy on the tuberose and accompanied by some additional white florals. There's some muskiness and some woodiness. It's a fragrance with heavy substance, so be aware of that when you spray this on. Another one where just a few sprays will take you through a large part of the day. I've been through multiple bottles of this. I will warn you though, one thing that I dislike about this fragrance is the sprayer. So the way that the bottle is designed, you press in on this little triangle here at the top and it spritzes out. And so a number of people have complained about the atomizer sort of breaking down over time and just sort of dribbling out. I have had that experience myself, and it's rather annoying. So the design of the bottle is thumbs down, but the fragrance inside, if you're a tuberose lover and if you like a woody tuberose, like imagine if you remember Amouage, that fragrance, but just in tuberose form with a lot of woodiness and muskiness and a lot of strength and power, you may want to give Michael Kors a chance. So then if you like Michael, but it's maybe a little too grown and sexy for you, or a little too deep, you want something just a tad bit more wearable, I would suggest Florence by Tocca. I really do enjoy these pretty little bottles. They look fantastic on a vanity or on a shelf with the gorgeous sort of Baroque design. I don't know if it's Baroque, but it sounds good to say that, Baroque design on the top there. Regardless, it's a romantic design, whatever label you want to put on it. The difference between these is I think the woodiness shows up deeper and heavier in this than on this fragrance, which does have some touches of greenness to it and a little bit of powderiness that make it maybe a tamer version of Michael. And I would say in the affordable category, generally speaking, it's not a cheapie by any means. You're going to pay a designer price for this. But if you get it, for example, in the Sephora sale, where you get 20% off, you can get a decent bottle of this, maybe like in the $60 range or so. And it's really pretty. This is great for all age groups, especially for our younger friends that are just getting into fragrance, that really want something pretty to sit on their vanity. Fantastic. I would say that this is a hit in my house as well. Another one that my husband adores and sometimes picks out for date night for me to wear. A little bit of fruitiness in this from, I think it's an apple and a pear note. But by and large, these two, I would say, are in the same family. Next up is a fragrance that also just doesn't get any shine on YouTube. I can't understand why. If you're a true tuberose lover and you can find a way to sniff this, I would say try it out. This one is called Tuberose Angelica, and this is from Jo Malone. And there's two versions, the regular sort of cologne version, and then the rich extract extrait version, which is this bottle that looks like that. It's got like a floral design on it. So if you can find this, they're both pretty. Okay, you can't go wrong with either one. But if you can find this one, I would say it has significantly more staying power and projection than the original one does, which is nice too. If you're familiar with the Angelica note, it has some greenness to it. So think about smells that are vegetal, okay, like vegetables or plants in nature, the greenness of them. I'm not talking about like fresh cut grass, which is its own distinct, really nice green smell. I would say the combination of the Angelica and the tuberose make this fragrance a bit more crisp, clean, and linear on the skin, although it does have a little bit of complexity from a nice vanilla and creaminess from ylang ylang. So all of that combines for a nice, crisp, fresh, green tuberose smell, but it doesn't get too scratchy in that direction. It has some grounding from those other notes that give it a nice base on the skin. And so this is a really nice one, particularly for the depths of late spring and summer when it's particularly hot and you want something a little fresher and cleaner, but still in the floral direction than perhaps some of the other ones I've mentioned, which are maybe better for fall and winter and date nights. This next fragrance is, in my opinion, a softer, more well-mannered, easy to wear day-to-day tuberose. I will say though that if you look at reviews on this, people talk about this being a very, very projecting fragrance. I don't get that from this. I find this to be more moderate in projection. It does last long, but I feel like it becomes soft during the day. And the fragrance that I'm speaking of is Boucheron, and this is Tuberouse de Madras. Tuberouse de Madras. So I have a caution, if you look this one up, to not be fooled by the notes that you see on Fragrantica in particular, because it'll make you think that you're getting more of a tropical fragrance. So the tropical aspects of this are represented by the yellow floral notes of frangipani and ylang ylang, and I think passion fruit also. They're really subtle. Whatever's happening in the tropical direction is really a background player. And at the forefront is a tuberose that's soft in, like I described, McQueen Eau Blanche being sort of a soft, more demure tuberose. I find this to be the same. So this is a more delicate, easy wear of a fragrance, definitely day to day. It's grounded a little bit from a sandalwood note and a hint of vanilla to give it some sweetness. It's not a sweet fragrance, but tuberose, if it can come across a little bit green and maybe even indolic, can be balanced out by notes like vanilla in a fragrance. So all in all, this is a fantastic day-to-day elegant tuberose that is on the softer side and not attention-seeking, but an easy wear, a demure tuberose. And I've always adored the bottles from this line as well. The next fragrance doesn't get a lot of love anymore on YouTube. It did get like this much love maybe a few years ago, and then people have forgotten about it and moved on to the latest shiny penny. I'm not mad at anybody for that. I do that too. We're all guilty. But this one really deserves a forefront in the tuberose lists. You all, it is Ralph Lauren Woman Intense. So there's a regular woman that's also a beautiful floral fragrance. This one in particular happens to be, in my opinion, one of the most highly feminine tuberose forward fragrances, not only in my collection, but that I've tried in general, even from the ones that I've had the opportunity to sample. This is the definition of gorgeous. It's a really luscious, round tuberose and has some fruit in the background as accompanying players. The fruit does not compete with the tuberose in this, but lends just this beauty and this prettiness to this fragrance. Black currant, rhubarb. There's a nice vanilla to give it some roundness, some sandalwood in this fragrance. So think about I would say in terms of density, a heavy tuberose without being, I don't find it to be a cloying fragrance at all, but it definitely has some presence. It has just this juiciness to it. It's a dense, substantial tuberose fragrance that is highly feminine, highly feminine. This is a great date night fragrance. I do like the black bottle, and I do like that it opens up like a flask. I don't know what the significance of that is or what, but you're not going to lose the top, friends. So Ralph Lauren Woman Intense, one of the top tuberose fragrances in my collection for sure. I have an honorable mention for a fragrance that I simply adore, although I would not call this the most tuberose forward fragrance because it has some other facets to it that I think shine just as much and for which I remember it. But I have really fantastic memories associated with this fragrance of me living my best carefree life in yesteryear. And it's Bond No. 9's Chinatown, Bond No. 9 Chinatown. Yes, there's a pronounced tuberose in here, but I also get from this fragrance a really strong spiciness and maybe some hints of incense that you will not see in any of the note structures. There's a little bit of like almost smoky incense in here, as well as a beautiful sandalwood that accompanies the tuberose and the cardamom. The cardamom is the star spicy player in this fragrance. And I just adore this for so many reasons. Everyone that has smelled this on me loves it on me. It plays very well on me. And everyone that I've spritzed this on as a fragrance to try has fallen in love with it and purchased a bottle. So I don't know what to say about this fragrance, except that I just love it. Spicy tuberose sandalwood, living my best life memory fragrance. By the way, before I round out the end of this video, I keep forgetting to mention that a number of these fragrances have gardenia in them as well as an accompaniment to that tuberose fragrance. So I apologize if you came for a gardenia video and I'm focusing more heavily on the tuberose aspects. They're really close in terms of scent. I find tuberose to be a deeper, denser note than gardenia, which has a little bit more greenness and earthiness to it, like just by a tad. But they're similar notes and play very well in fragrances together. Okay, so we're going to round out this video with two quintessential tuberose fragrances that if you try nothing else, try these two just for the reference. Like get decants just to say that you smelled them and you know what they smell like because they are iconic tuberose fragrances. The first, I don't own. Someday I will probably purchase a bottle. I just don't need it right now, but I do enjoy it and like to sample it. It's Frederic Malle Carnal Flower. Carnal Flower. What I love about this fragrance is that it's a pure, in my mind, a pure tuberose scent, like what the actual flower smells like. Which means, quite frankly, that it has a little bit of greenness to it and maybe a slight bit of what some people might consider a funky smell. But you get a little bit of that in Carnal Flower. It comes across also green, as I mentioned. There's a coconut, a real faint coconut nut that accompanies the tuberose as well as some ylang-ylang. As it settles down on your skin, it becomes a little bit fuller. When you first spray Carnal Flower on your skin, you might wonder what all the fuss is about, and I can totally understand that. It might seem a little bit sharp to you, a little bit green, maybe slightly synthetic in nature. As you give it an opportunity to calm down, a little bit of that creaminess from the coconut and the ylang-ylang and some of the muskiness begins to shine through and accompany that tuberose, true tuberose type of scent to make this a little bit more well-rounded and an easy wear. Some folks get a real tropical feel out of this fragrance. I can't say that I do. To me, it's still more of a floral forward fragrance than like that sort of tropical, thick, coconutty type of thing that you associate with tropical fragrances or even like a fruitiness. But it's an iconic fragrance. It was not the earliest on, but maybe in terms of like recent perfumery, one of the earlier-ish fragrances released on the market that really sort of made a big splash in terms of being a tuberose fragrance. So then, the number one slot for tuberose fragrances, the queen of tuberoses, in my opinion, has been for a long time and continues to be one that a lot of people just cannot wear. It's too much for them, and I totally get it. And it is Fracas by Robert Piguet. I always want to say Fracas, and forever I will call it Fracas. But yes, I know French speakers, everybody calm down, you don't say the S, I get it. Here's a fragrance that to me smells so thick. It smells the way that I describe this, and you have to hang with me for this description. It's almost like it's as thick as butter and as pungent as butter that has nearly gone rancid, but not quite yet. So I know that sounds gross, but it's not. It works in this fragrance. So something that this fragrance has that becomes more and more apparent the longer that the bottle sits. So this is like bottle number 3 for me at this point. And I have a backup, by the way. And by the way, let me just say, I've sold a lot of my backup fragrances because as the collection grows, it seems sillier and sillier to keep backups, like I'll never get to it. This is one that I just refuse to be without. It has this beautiful fruity accord, mostly from a peach fragrance. So think about like the sweetest, fleshiest, juiciest peach that you can imagine running through this. That peachiness combined with everything else happening in this fragrance just give this tuberose heavy queen of a fragrance a dense, heavy, luscious smell. This smells highly feminine, absolutely beautiful, like an all-encompassing, in my opinion, very special occasion kind of fragrance. Fabulous for the deep of winter, maybe a little too daring to wear for the summertime, and not for everyone. If you think some fragrances are cloying, you might not enjoy this. But I just love the thick muskiness of this, a little touch of woodiness, that beautiful, like I said, dense tuberose accompanied by that peachy thing. This is just beauty in a bottle for me, my opinion. Here you go, Fracas, the queen, the queen. I hope you enjoyed this. Let me know your thoughts on these. Don't forget to check the description box and maybe the pinned comment for the additional suggestions that didn't make it into this video so that I can keep this at a reasonable length. I appreciate you watching, and I hope you find a tuberose fragrance that suits you and your personal style. I'll see you in the next video. Take care, friends.